Hello YouTube, MobileTechnology Reviews here, and today I'm going to be doing a software review on the Nikon Coolpix L810 digital camera. Now in this software review, I'm going to be taking an in-depth look at the software and operating system that this camera implements. And so, let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, now here we are taking a look at the 3-inch LCD display on the back of this camera. And we're going to take a closer look at the user interface that the Coolpix L810 implements. So this screen that you're looking at is what appears when you first boot up the camera. It's just your basic viewfinder with some monitor status icons. This denotes what scene mode you're in. That little camera means that I'm in auto mode. This tells you if the flash is on or off. You've got a battery monitor status icon up there. This shows you if the vibration reduction settings turned on and off. This is the autofocus assist status icon that shows you if the autofocus assist is on or off. And as you saw there, the camera just turned off, and that's part of the auto off feature. After a certain amount of time, the camera will turn off if you don't interact with it. Continuing on with the status icons, this shows you what resolution you're shooting in. As you can see, I have 29 minutes left of video to shoot on this card. This shows you the resolution of stills you have selected, and this shows you how many pictures you have left on your card. So that's your basic viewfinder. You can turn grid lines on if you want to help set up the perfect image. But first, let's take a look at your scene modes. Now the scene mode button is off to the right of the display, as you know from watching my hardware review of this camera. Go up to the top here and talk first about easy auto mode. Now easy auto mode is basically where the camera sets everything for you. It sets the white balance, the ISO, the exposure compensation. It sets everything you need for you, so you don't really have to do anything in easy auto mode. In fact, the only thing that you can actually change yourself is the resolution of the stills. For the most part, I found that easy auto mode does a good job picking the right exposure, ISO, etc. It produces pretty good shots, and overall I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, it works just as an easy auto mode works. Now personally, it's not the greatest easy auto mode. I don't think it's the greatest easy auto mode out there. I think that some other brands, such as Panasonic, have better auto modes. But Nikon has done a pretty good job with their easy auto mode, and it generally does a good job with shots. Now here is your list of different scene modes, and as you can see, there is a ton of them. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that most of these are useless to most people. You've got ones like portrait and landscape and sports, which are pretty useful, and you've also got panorama and that kind of thing. But you've got things like party indoor and sunset, which are really not all that useful. I've only used a handful of these because I've basically realized that most of them are not very useful. Here's smart portrait mode. Now, if you want to take a picture of someone or a group or a self-portrait, anything like that, you're going to want to use smart portrait mode. Now, smart portrait mode provides the optimal settings for taking photos of people. There is a portrait mode in the scene selection, as you saw earlier, but I think smart portrait works a little bit better, and it just takes very good portrait images. Auto mode is the mode that I use most frequently because it's similar to easy auto mode, and the camera still sets a lot of options for you, but you can change some settings such as white balance, exposure compensation, ISO, all those kind of things. So I think that really auto mode gives you the most amount of manual settings of the scene modes on this camera, and I think that most people are going to want to use auto mode most, unless they're not very skilled with the camera, in which case they'll probably end up using easy auto mode, which is not a bad mode to use. but personally I prefer auto mode. So we're in auto mode. We're going to take a look at the settings in the menu, and the menu button is again on the right side of the screen along with all the other buttons. First menu item you have is image mode, and you can adjust the resolution of your stills from VGA to 16 megapixels, and these are all in 4:3 aspect ratio, and at the bottom here we have 12 megapixels, which is in the 16:9 aspect ratio. Excuse me. So when I want to take a picture and put it in a video, I usually choose 16:9, and if I want to take a picture that I might want to print, I'll choose 16 megapixels 4:3. And really, you can't tell much of a difference in resolution, sharpness wise, between the 12 megapixel 16:9 and 16 megapixel 4:3. They're really close. And overall, if you set it to 16 megapixels, you'll basically be set. It's very sharp. You can also adjust your white balance. You can adjust it from auto to preset manual, daylight, incandescent, fluorescent, cloudy, and flash. Flash being the most yellow white balance, and incandescent being the white balance with the most bluish hue. I leave it set to auto mostly just because I think it does the best job, unless I really need to get a bluish looking shot or a yellowish looking shot, anything like that. Here is the shot modes. You can have single shot, continuous shot, BSS, and multi-shot 16, which shoots 16 shots in succession. Now I have not spent a lot of time with this these continuous shot modes. I usually just leave it set to single, so I'm probably not the best person to explain to you exactly how these function and how well they function. So you can also adjust your ISO from auto, which is what I mainly leave it set to 80 ISO all the way up to 1600 ISO. So it's a pretty wide range of ISO sensitivity options there. It's pretty standard for your point and shoot bridge camera. You can apply some color filters and change some color options. You have standard color, vivid color, black and white, sepia, and cyanotype. The difference between standard color and vivid color is not really apparent. Vivid color does boost colors a little bit, but not significantly. So that's it for your shooting menu in auto mode. You can also change some movie options here. You can change the video resolution from HD 720p down to VGA 640 by 480, which I'm not sure exactly why you'd want to unless you have a computer that doesn't have the processing power to edit 720p videos, in which case you would use VGA. But for most people, I think that the 720p video recording will suit their needs fine. You can change the autofocus mode during video recording from single autofocus to full time. And single autofocus focuses on your subject at the beginning of the video and keeps that focus throughout. So if you move your subject during the video, the focus is going to be a little bit off. Now if you set it to full-time autofocus, if you move your subject, it'll keep the focus on the subject throughout the video. And I think that full-time autofocus is probably a better option to leave the camera set to. You also have a wind noise reduction feature here, which helps reduce the wind noise in the microphones while you're shooting video. And I found that it works okay, but I mean, there's really not much you can do if you're in a windstorm and you're shooting video. You're still going to have that really crackly sound from the microphones, and this doesn't really do that great of a job to stop that. Here at your setup screens, there's a lot of settings here. I'm not going to go over all of them in detail, but here's welcome screen, and basically you can set either the Coolpix logo or a picture of your choosing to pop up on the welcome screen when you first boot the camera on. And of course you have the option to set nothing, which is what I have. And if you set the Coolpix or the image of your choice, then the camera will take quite a bit longer to boot up, and sometimes you'll miss the shot that you want. You can set your time and date, monitor settings. You can turn all that status info on and off, and you can change the brightness of the LCD display. And I found that this LCD display is quite bright, and it's easily viewable in bright sunlight, so you don't really need to turn it up anymore than just where it comes, which is right in the middle at 3. You can turn the print date on and off in the bottom corner of the photo, which most people are not going to want to. Most people are going to leave it set to off unless they really need a print date on there. You can change your vibration reduction on and off, which the vibration reduction is a feature that's built into the lens. It's that lens shift vibration reduction. And it basically just helps reduce the vibration if you bump your camera while you're shooting or record video, and it'll help kind of get rid of some blurry images and blurry video, that kind of thing. You can turn motion detection on and off. It'll basically detect if there's motion and adjust some settings. Autofocus assist is that red light in the front, and you can turn that from auto to off. Sound settings, you can adjust settings for shutter sound and button sound. Now the button sound, I'll warn you, is a little bit annoying on this. If if you're pressing a lot of the buttons, it'll get a little bit annoying. But the shutter button sound is not too annoying, and it's not very extremely loud. So auto off function is what I was talking about earlier. After a certain amount of time, the camera will shut off on itself if you're not interacting with it, all the way from 30 seconds up to 30 minutes. And you can turn sleep on and off, so the display will turn off. You can format your SD card, change the language. You have TV settings here. You can change your video mode from NTSC to PAL, which is used in most European countries, while NTSC is used in Japan and United States. As I said in my hardware review, this does have a HDMI output port, so you can adjust some settings here. You can have your blink warning on or off, Wi-Fi upload, you don't know what that is. You can reset your camera. You can change your battery type from alkaline to nickel metal hydride to lithium, depending on what type of battery you have inserted in the camera. Right now I currently have nickel metal hydride rechargeable battery set in there, so I have it set to the nickel metal hydride setting. Honestly, if you have nickel metal hydrides in here and you have it on the alkaline setting, it's not really going to make a ton of difference. But if you set it to the correct setting, it'll kind of optimize the camera's performance and the battery's performance. You can take a look at the firmware version, which this particular camera runs software version 1.0. And that's about it for your setup options. As you can see, there are 3 pages there. That's a lot of settings, and I do appreciate a lot of them. A lot of them are pretty useful. Now, when I first got this camera, only 3 options were on this page. These 3 options were all that was there, and I was kind of wondering what's going on, because whenever I tried to scroll up, none of those other options were there. So what I had to do was reset the camera, and then all of those additional settings showed up. And so that's a little bit interesting. I don't know why those did not show up when I first bought the phone and bought the camera and booted it up, but they're there now. So if you run into that problem, just letting you know that I had the exact same thing happen to me. So that's it for the settings. Now on the navigational pad to the right of the display, if you click the left button, you can turn the self-timer on and off. And the self-timer lasts for 10 seconds, and the red LED blinks while it's counting down. The flash mode here, if you press the upper button on the navigational pad, you can turn the flash on and off. Now if you have the manual flash popped up, you can turn it from auto flash to auto with red eye reduction, off, fill flash, and slow sync. I usually set it to either auto or fill flash. And if you pop the flash down, it'll turn the flash off. If you hit the rightmost key on the navigational pad, you can adjust your exposure compensation. Now the weird thing is, I'm not sure why they put the exposure compensation on this navigational pad and not in the settings, like they did with ISO and white balance, but I guess because these are more frequently changed settings. You can change it all the way up to 2.0 EV and all the way down to negative 2.0 EV. I just leave it set at 0 because for most shots, does. 0 EV usually does the trick. If you press the downmost button on the navigational pad, you can turn your macro mode on and off, so if you want to shoot some really up-close subjects. And that's really about it. Now, another thing I'm going to show you. Now, here we go. I was on auto mode. Now I'm going to change to easy auto mode and go back to the menu. And as you can see there, it brought me to the resolution. And that's because that's the only thing you can change in the easy auto mode. You still have the same video settings, but for stills, you can only change the resolution. And with Smart Portrait, you get a couple of different options again. You can have skin softening on and off, smile timer on, off, blink proof on and off. Just a couple of different settings that go with the different scene modes. And some of these settings have different options. It just depends on what scene mode you're on. So that's really the extent of the user interface of this camera. It's pretty generic. I like the looks of the menus. I like the black grayish background of the menus and the white text. I think it looks very good, and the white contrasts well with the black. And just overall, it's a pretty nicely laid out user interface. It's really not very confusing. So that's really about it for that. And as you saw there, this is the playback or play menu where you can view your images and videos, and this is just a picture of a diecast model that I took for a review of on a different YouTube channel, but you can just scroll through your different images and it gives you some information on them, when you took them and what number photo they are. And that's really about it for the user interface of this camera. Alright, so that was my software review of the Nikon Coolpix L810. Overall, I think that the software and user interface of this camera is very nice. It's very well laid out, and everything's implemented very well. I like the UI and the design and how all the menus look and everything, and overall, I think that Nikon did quite a good job with the user interface that they put on this Nikon Coolpix L810. So that's it. Stay tuned for my video that will be detailing the photo and video quality of this camera. But until then, Mobile Technology Reviews here, and catch you guys next time. See ya.